Everyone. I'm really pleased to be joined with Val Wishart, actually my accountant. Hi, Val. You
Hi.
very kindly offered to give some time just to talk a little bit about accounting, and when it comes to founders or early stage businesses, especially when the right time might be to explore whether or not you need to use an accountant and what are the benefits and other kinds of considerations that you should be taking under advisement before you start that process. So I thank you very much for making the time to talk.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So if someone's just starting out with their business, or maybe it's a side project, it's not yet a business, is there a value in a founder managing their own books to start with?
There is, to some extent, some value in doing that, provided that you know what you're doing. And that's a big provided that, because a lot of people that start up a business because they're really good at doing what it is that they do, or they've got an idea, or they think they want to do something and be their own boss, or for lots of reasons. But many people that start their own business don't have any experience of running their own books and managing their own books. And there is value in it, because especially at the start of a business, you need to be on top of how much you're spending. You need to be on top of how your business is performing against where you wanted it to be. So there's a great deal of value in being in and about the numbers to know that yourself at the start. However, what I would say is you need to know what you're doing. So if you manage to find a good accountant who will get you set up and train you in what you need to do, that's a great place to start out, because then you'll be doing things the right way. It's a false economy probably not to get an accountant to do that at the start, because you probably spend more money getting them to unravel what you've done wrong afterwards when you bring them in. So there's kind of pros and cons. And it depends on what kind of person you are. If you're the kind of person who has attention to detail and who's happy to be on top of things and keep things up to date, then great. You know, the cloud accounting solutions that there are out there at the moment are fabulous for you, if that's the type of person you are. But if you know that you're the kind of person who will just forget about that and carry on doing the other things that you want to do, then you're best to get somebody to do it from the start.
And I think that kind of leads on what I think I know what you might say, but at what point do you find that it makes the most sense for a founder or an early stage company to actually hire a professional bookkeeper?
Again, it depends on the person very much. For some people, we would ask the question when we meet them, how good are you at being on top of things and keeping things up to date? And if you're not, then we would suggest that either we would do it for you or a bookkeeper would do it for you. So it's really a lot to do with that, but it's also to do with what do you want to be spending your time doing? How many other things have you got to do, and what are the priorities of those other things? So actually looking at the amount of time you've got in a day and all the things that you've got to do, what's the best use of that time? If you are expert at going, or if you need to go out and get funding and talk to investors and things like that, why are you doing your own VAT return? You know, go and do the things that your business needs you to do.
I mean, oftentimes the answer to that is the cost, right?
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes, especially when interacting with professional services, you especially professional services that you might not understand, like let's say accountancy, you worry that you're going to fall down a rabbit hole of service upon service of things that you're pushed and peddled, right? And so when thinking about the getting your business up and running, a lot of people assume that you can, you go to a lawyer to get the legals done, or you could do it yourself. You go to an accountant to get the accountancy side of the business done, or you can do it yourself. But there's also, at least from my perspective, there's a lot of this middle ground in terms of all the different like types of either administrative reporting or financial services that you might need. And so what are the things that an accountant or regular or typical accountancy firms can help you with that people might not realize?
Okay, so most people would probably think that they go to an accountant to do all the things that keep them compliant with the law. So they file all their taxes when they need to be filed and all the rest of it. Accountants nowadays should be doing a lot more than that, because we now have technology that helps us to do the accounting side of things more quickly. What we as a profession should be doing for our clients is helping them with where they want to go with their business, helping them to create maybe the business plan, helping them to make sure that the financial forecasting is right. If you're looking for investment, often investors are much comforted by the fact that an accountant has, if not done the numbers, at least sense checked the numbers and made sure that they all actually make sense and that the assumptions are reasonable assumptions. So that's something that your accountant can do for you. But your accountant can also sit with you and do a review from time to time to see, are you on track with where you wanted to be? How are you doing with that? What's your cash flow looking like? When are you going to run out of money, and what are you going to do about it before you get there? So that nothing comes as a surprise in your business, so that you actually know how things are going, and that you can make decisions based on actual solid information that somebody else is helping you to interpret. And that's what accountants should be doing for businesses.
So I mean, all of that sounds like
a lot of people probably don't know that. A lot of people don't realize that.
Exactly. I think a lot of times you think, oh, the accountant is the one that is working my zero for me. Not and I actually need a startup a cash flow forecasting expert in order to do M&A calculations for me. And to be honest, that I didn't know that existed. Like I didn't know I didn't know you were for that, for example.
Okay.
And some of the other,
sorry, I lost you there for a minute.
Oh, no problem. I was just saying that a lot of these other services, initially, certainly when I started this whole process, I kind of overcomplicated it in my own mind. And I thought, well, until I kind of started talking with you and understanding that these kinds of tasks or these kinds of projects like forecasting, preparing for investment, they aren't requiring necessarily an expert in, for our case, social media startups and that kind of area. And do you, but on the flip side, you do meet a lot of people who have had challenging experiences or experiences with accountants that may not just have made sense for the time. When do you think it's like, how would you advise someone going about evaluating whether or not an accountant or accountancy firm is the right match for them, whether it's in terms of their budget or just in terms of the types of services that they offer?
That's a difficult question, and it is down to research, because there are lots of different kinds of accountancy firms and different sizes, and they do different things and they charge different prices, so it can be quite overwhelming. If you know anybody, speak to somebody and find out if they recommend somebody. That's always a good place to start, especially if you know somebody that is within your kind of area or field or sector or something like that, because they may well be working with somebody that actually they find is great. Don't necessarily think that if you are going for rapid growth or rapid expansion or international expansion or something like that, that you need one of the big firms. You don't necessarily need that. Perhaps what you actually need is a firm where you'll get more of a personal service, and where you will have somebody that you know that you can talk to, that you can trust, that you will feel as if they're your partner in your business to take you forward. Mm-hmm. So I guess what I'm saying is that's all about the relationship, and it's finding somebody that you feel understands you, understands what you're trying to do, and is able to help you. So as an example, my firm, as you know, is a small firm, but we can bring in expertise from anywhere we need it if we don't have it in-house. So we have a very large field of experts that we can call on to help in just about anything that our clients would need. So we may not be a big firm, but we do have a relationship, a personal relationship with our clients. We know them. And so that might be a much more helpful thing for somebody that's starting up, rather than going to a bigger firm where they're just a number.
So obviously you're slightly biased in terms of your stage, right? But at what point? So what is the place of larger firms, and what kind of value do they normally bring, maybe to whether it's to larger scale companies or at different stages, or more expertise, advice? Why? When is it good to think about considering maybe a larger firm?
I think once you get to a certain level, once your growth becomes to the extent where your turnover's really grown rapidly, and you're I don't want to put a number on it, but you get to a certain stage where you've got a large team involved, you've got something more complicated, you potentially have many different kinds of shareholders, and you want to create complicated corporate structures, or there are difficulties with overseas taxes and things like that. You might want to get somebody where all of that expertise is in-house, and you know that you don't need to be shopping around for any of that kind of stuff. So big firms absolutely, and medium-sized firms definitely have their place. Potentially not necessarily particularly helpful for startups, and for small businesses. I think obviously that having a personal relationship with your client is a good thing, but I'm definitely not saying that big firms don't have their place, because they do. And if you're lucky and good enough to take your company to the place where you're going to be floating on a stock exchange, etc., you need big firm help for that kind of thing. So
I also think, though, when looking at small firms, that there are small firms and there are small firms. So, frankly, one of the reasons why we went with you when we were evaluating different firms was the fact that you yourself actually crowned in working for a much larger firm, and it was about the ability for you to understand the language, I guess, of larger firms, so that you could, I don't know, cut through some of what it is that we've been hearing. I know that the particular issue that we kind of started with, or came to you with, was this complicated transaction that we were advised to do that was going to cost quite a bit of money, and you analyzed that, but you because of your experience, you knew that we didn't have to do that. So that to me, though, is a very different type of small firm than of course maybe a more local and locally focused firm might be, where the partner or the owner hadn't worked in that like larger scale environment. Does that make sense? Do you agree, or is that not really really what you should be looking at?
I'm not entirely certain that had anything to do with me having worked in a larger scale environment. Is the honest truth. So I'm not. There is. It's a valid point you're making. That, but what I would say is possibly an even more valid point is to find somebody who has perhaps sat in your shoes, as it were.
Sure.
So being on the side of being in industry rather than just in the accountancy profession. So
Right.
they know what it means to be in a business, starting up a business, closing down a business, hiring, firing, all of that kind of stuff, cash flow, managing cash flow on a day-to-day basis, all of these kinds of things. Actually, what it means to run a business, I think, is the most valid experience that you could potentially find in an accountant, because they understand you.
Yeah, deeply misunderstood people. So, well, I mean, that's been super helpful. Just to kind of rehash that and to break it down a little bit. Are there the like common trigger points that you find when founders actually start getting in touch with you, and maybe something's happened or something has changed, and obviously you wish that they would have gotten in touch before, but what are the common what are the common points at which someone's like, oh, I give up, I need help?
Yeah, often when somebody realizes that they need to be registered for VAT,
mm-hmm.
And actually sometimes people have tried to do it themselves and have completely messed up the registration process and applied to be for the wrong type or whatever it might be, or they just look at the registration and go, oh, I can't do that. And so that's one trigger point. Another one is help. I've actually got to file accounts at Companies House and haven't the first idea where to start with it, or help. Actually, my deadline's coming up for filing my accounts at Companies House and haven't done anything about it yet. They're the kind of main things where if somebody has tried to do everything themselves from the start, when they would actually try and get in touch with us. So usually sometime within the first, say, 18 months of the company being set up.
Yeah, I think our trigger points were maybe 4 or 5 of them at the same time. It was like, trying to do payroll ourselves and spinning that up. Trying to do
payroll. That was the other one. Payroll.
Yeah, payroll. Exactly. Yeah. So, I guess just to kind of finish off, like, are there specific tactics that you'd advise people to use when considering what kind of support that they need? I know in terms of like evaluating the types of firms we've talked about, but how do you know if you need a certain level of support from a firm when you haven't really interacted with them yet, and you don't know what your capability is in terms of being able to do some of the work?
Talk to them.
No way.
Actually, have a conversation. Speak to an accountant. You don't have to pay anything to actually go and meet with an accountant, and have a chat and just ask them to talk you through all the things that you should be doing, so that you get an idea of what all these things are, because you wouldn't believe the number of people that come into me that have no idea whatsoever what it is that they need to do, and they leave the room with a very confused and bamboozled look on their face thinking, help, I need help with this, because there's so much, and our country doesn't make things easy for people that are starting out in business. So we need to, we as accountants can help you to try and cut through that and try and simplify it and chunk it down for you, so that you can actually understand what's involved, and you can go away from that meeting thinking, right, I think I can probably do that bit myself. I know that I can't do that bit myself. I need help with this. And then you can start to speak to accountants about, well, who's the right person for me? How much do I have to spend on this? How's it all going to work, etc. But actually just find somebody and go and talk to them and have a chat with them. We're all happy to have a coffee and a chat with people to help them out with that.
Yeah. Well, great. Thank you so much for giving me a few minutes to this. I really appreciate it.
No problem at all.
All right. Take care.
Okay. Thank you, Rob. Bye.
All right, bye.